differently. Okay, well, welcome everyone. We're glad that you're able to make it today. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Lisa Landerman. I'm the Vice President of Student Affairs at Willamette University, and I use she, her pronouns. And today we're going to talk about ways that we are partnering with families to make sure that we're supporting your students toward thriving and having a wonderful year at Willamette. And before I get started, I'd like to introduce my fellow panelists. And so I will call on them to just on mic and to introduce themselves. So let's begin with Don Thompson.
Hi, good evening, everybody. It's so nice to have you join us here. So my name is Don Thompson. I use he, him pronouns. I am the director of Bishop Wellness Center, which is our student health and counseling center.
Wonderful. And Abbas Hill.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Abbas Hill. I'm the Dean of Students for Community Care and Inclusion. I use he, him, his pronouns.
And Ross.
Hi, welcome everyone. My name is Ross Stout. I'm Director of Campus Safety. I use he, him pronouns.
And Kat.
Hi, my name is Kat McAnally, and I'm the Coordinator of Student Life and Events at PNCA Willamette. I've been in student life for about 5 years, and before that, I was an alum of the Animated Arts program, and I use she, they pronouns.
So we are very excited that we are going to be talking about not just our Willamette University in Salem, but also Willamette University at PNCA in Portland, and excited to have this new partnership. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen as we're going to just talk a little bit with a short presentation and then open this up for questions. So let me go ahead and do that. And please, I'm asking for forgiveness now for my very temperamental mouse. Okay, so to begin, as I said, I have a temperamental mouse. So first I'd like to start this presentation with this slide for a little bit of humor, a little bit hard when we're not in person, but to just say that we understand this is a process. If you remember, it wasn't so long ago, probably you were helping your student go off to their first day of school, and it might have looked a little bit like this first slide, and their first day of college might look a little bit like this second slide. Or for some of you, it might be the reverse. Wherever you are and your family and your student are, it's okay. I think the point of this is just to say, we understand that this can be an emotional time. And so what I want to just introduce a little bit is understanding kind of the emerging adulthood, the development that students are going through. And I share this because this is a framework by which we use to think about the holistic development of the student, that what we're doing in student life is support students outside of the classroom, that we're looking at the whole student. And so again, if we were in person, I might ask, or if our chat function was working, we would ask, at what age did you feel like an adult, and what might have marked you feeling that way? And I say that because we legally and often think of when a student goes off to college that's the mark of adulthood. But then when we ask people to really reflect on that, for some it's not until they graduated, or not until they got in a relationship, or it might have been when they had their first child. The answers we get are often all over the map, and yet we're asking students, many of us, to make a lot of adult decisions, for themselves and take care of themselves in ways that are maybe not necessarily what they're ready for or used to, or maybe as a family you're not ready for. And yet what we want to do is make sure that we're setting them up so that they can be successful at trying to make some of those decisions. So that's what we call it emerging adulthood, with recognition that it's a transition. And in some of the stages that William Arnett, who talks about adulthood, talks about, is identity exploration. And this is the time where they might have knew exactly who they are and what they believed. And college is often the time they're introduced to new people, new ideas, and they start to explore who are they and what really matters to them. Understandably, it's a time of instability what mattered to them before. They often are moving every 9 months, from on campus or off campus, or to an apartment, or commuting from home. And so sometimes it can feel unsettling. It's a time where students are really self-focused, and sometimes families can feel like that's more self-centered. And I would just say that this is a time where they are really reflecting on who they are and what they want to be. And so that might feel like more attention is focused on them than perhaps sometimes that transition for families can be difficult. They're feeling in between, right? In between where's home, in between what I thought I wanted to do, where I want to be. They're, even after college, sometimes it can be unsettling as they're trying to decide who they are. But it's also a time of real possibilities and optimism, often that stereotypical idealism. And sometimes families are alarmed by the idealistic ideas about saving the world or changing the world that students have with such enthusiasm. So all of these things are going on, and part of what our role in student affairs, student life is to support students as they're transitioning through all of these, as they become, enter into adulthood. This is a quote that I like to point out that's in the Arnett book about how well an adolescent makes this transition through young adulthood into adulthood and become a fully independent person depends large in part on that right balance of the adolescents pushing for independence and parents and society giving the correct amount of support, not pushing too hard or holding back too much. So what we're hoping for is that we are giving students just enough independence and enough support to make those decisions without holding them back. And some of that means that they might be making some mistakes. And hopefully we're going to be here to help them learn from them. And so what we're here today to talk about are ways that we can try to figure out together what that right balance is so that they can emerge successfully into adulthood. Essentially, the question is, how can we be good company for students' learning journeys? So we're going to talk about the changing role of parents, and I share this slide as a stereotype of the helicopter parent who's hovering around students. And I want to say that often parents, this gets sort of a bad reputation, the helicopter parent stereotype. And what I want to say is actually we look at you as partners. We don't want you completely out of the picture. We hope that you continue to be engaged, but at the same time, the student is the one who's going to decide to what degree they want their parent or family members or guardians or significant others involved in their lives. And so that is changing, where before perhaps you were the decider of how involved you would be, and now the student is in the driver's seat. So I start by my first advice is to keep calm in this time of transition, but to ask good questions, that despite perhaps students pushing family members away, there's actually really is a good time to ask some questions of the things that they're thinking about, that even though you might be getting a talk to the hand when you ask, in reality, we find and research shows that parents and family members still are some of the biggest influence on the decisions students make, even though it doesn't look that way. So questions around managing finances and what you expect from them academically, questions and thoughts about alcohol and other drug use, how they're going to maintain their health and well-being, expectations for how they're going to ask for help when needed and knowing their campus resources, and getting engaged in campus activities. These are all great conversations to have as you're spending time in these last few weeks before your student embarks on the college experience. Make your availability explicit. And so whether that's some form of social media, or whether that's telephone, or whether that's snail mail, make a plan for how frequently are you expecting to be in conversation with your student. Understand that while you might be wondering all the time what's happening in your student's life, it is not uncommon for students to not respond immediately to texts, not respond to phone calls because they're immersed in their college experience. Doesn't mean they don't care about you, but it means that is what often happens at college. And if you have a different expectation about that, make that explicit and make a plan for what that would look like. So what we're going to move into now is some of the more specifics about how we're supporting students' well-being, but know that we really see it as a community responsibility. It's not just the Bishop Health and Wellness Center, which you're going to hear a little bit more about, the counseling and the health center, but it is about all of us. We really see that we all play a role in supporting students. So with that, I introduce Ross.
Great, thanks, Lisa. So as I mentioned, my name is Ross Stott, Director of Campus Safety. And so I supervise campus safety staff both in Salem and in Portland. And there are campus safety officers who are on duty in the Salem campus 24 hours a day at all times. And at the Portland campus, officers are on duty from 7 a.m. until midnight. We're looking to expand that a bit in the future, but that's the current time that staff is available there. But because that gap does exist in those early morning hours, we contract with a security company called Echelon Security, who is available to respond to emergencies and also provide escorts for students during those hours when campus safety officers aren't on duty. And so campus safety does provide escorts to students several blocks off campus, particularly in the area downtown between the main academic building and the art house residence hall. That's about 5 blocks. And should the students want an escort day or night, campus safety officers are available to help them with that. Somewhat associated with that is a safe ride system that we have. We've been using a cab company for many years, and that's still available to students. All they need to do is call that cab company and show their student ID to the driver. That cost of that cab will be charged to their student account. Don't need to have cash or credit card with them in order to do that. But this year we added the Lyft rideshare program to that, and so they'll have the opportunity to have a Willamette associated Lyft account to be able to access Safe Ride program for that. So in addition to safety and security, the service center associated with campus safety issues parking permits and ID cards. And part of that is building access, which is security related. But in addition to having access to the residence hall where they live, they're going to have access to a number of academic buildings. Some academic buildings are available to all students, and others, their faculty members will put in a request to us. They're, say, a music student or a science student who needs access to those academic buildings. That access can be added to their ID cards so that we keep the buildings locked, you know, as many hours of the day as we possibly can. We only have them open when we have off-campus people as visitors accessing them, and students and employees can get into those buildings using their electronic ID cards, and so we kind of maintain the maximum amount of security for those buildings. So on the slide here, the residence halls are locked 24 hours a day. We want to make sure that students are diligent about making sure those buildings remain locked, or of course they're locked, but we make sure they're not propped open, because it's very important that we not have people that aren't part of our community entering into the buildings, particularly the residence halls. One of the additional services we have in Portland is contract with another organization called Clean and Safe, and they are available around the area where the academic building and residence hall are located, and will respond if there are individuals in the community who are suffering from mental illness or other difficulties navigating their lives. The Clean and Safe people will respond and assist those individuals. And that helps, not only helps those individuals, obviously, which we want, but also helps the neighborhood immediately adjacent to the building, help people who are perhaps struggling with some some difficult situations. So I'll leave it there, and if there are questions at the end, I'm happy to answer those.
Like that next part is me. So hello, everybody. Again, my name is Don Thompson. I'm the director of Bishop Wellness Center, which includes both our health center and our counseling center. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the services available to students in both, and as well as talk about some important deadlines for students. I will say a question that comes up whenever we give these panels: your students will be getting this information several times and in several venues. So trust that they will also have access to this information. So as mentioned, our Health and Wellness Center has both health services and counseling services available for students. For our Salem students, that means free health visits. So we, regardless of insurance coverage, I'll talk about our student insurance plan here in a moment, but regardless of insurance coverage, students can access the health center. Talking to a provider is always free. There are labs, or excuse me, fees charged for things like labs and medicines and supplies and things like that. But generally speaking, talking to a provider is going to be free. All students are going to have access to free and confidential counseling services. Both our Salem Willamette students and our PNCA students will have physical counseling services available to them. All will have also access to telehealth for both health and counseling. So that's exciting. On the medical side, we have a full-time nurse practitioner, a full-time medical assistant. I hope to be hiring a part-time physician here shortly as well. On the counseling side, we've got a number of licensed professional counselors, social workers, and psychologists, all with lots of years of experience in college mental health. We have a counselor with BIPOC focus, supporting our BIPOC students. We also have a really important position in our office, which is a dedicated case manager. And that person's job is to really help students get connected to care off campus. We're mindful, of course, when somebody needs some specialty care or a private additional support outside of what we can offer. You know, navigating that process can be daunting. Insurance is complicated. And so having this case manager has been such a benefit to helping our students really make that transition and really become good advocates for their own healthcare. When we think about the health services, the physical health services, we are a great first stop for a range of the really standard issues that we see in college health: the coughs, the colds, the reproductive health, the injuries, the dermatology concerns, things like that. We do offer flu shots in the fall. And again, if there's anything that falls outside of our scope, we can make a lot of referrals to the community. For our Salem campus, know that we quite literally share a street with a major hospital and emergency and urgent care. And we also, for any families from the West Coast, we have several Kaiser facilities that are proximate to campus as well. PNCA students, as mentioned, will have access to telehealth here. And I'll show you in a slide in a moment here. There are a number of resources really close to the PNCA campus for students to access their health needs as well. On the counseling side, it is free and confidential, and there are no session limits. So this is a really important thing for students to know exists. So we also have a free 24/7 telephone crisis line that is available to only Willamette and PNCA students. It is a fantastic resource available 24/7 to them. And again, we offer a number of referrals out into the community as well. As mentioned, there are a number of facilities quite close to PNCA that are listed there. And ZocDoc is a really great resource for, you can plug in your insurance information and it will spit out providers that are close to campus that are in network. But please know that if anybody ever needs help finding a provider, help or counseling, the Bishop Wellness Center is a good place to start. We can help point you in the right direction and get you connected with a case manager to help you with that. Shifting gears, these are really important requirements. The next two slides are really important. There are a number of things that your student must do, and all of them have received a number of emails to this end. The health history form, the emergency contact, the measles immunization, and of course we have a COVID vaccine requirement that is tomorrow. for Willamette and Monday, the 26th for PNCA. And I highlighted the students have received several emails with prompts. And I just would want to say that's a really important transition that you can really support your student with, is to start checking their student emails and student accounts. That is where all of the really, really important information is communicated to students. We, of course, will include families and parents generally around some of these big deadlines, but the links and the portals and all of the really important things are going to your student. And I know that that is a bit of a transition for a lot of students who are perhaps unaccustomed to sort of their life and world happening on email, but that really is how the really important things happen here. So please, please, please encourage your student to check their email every single day. It is really important. Lastly, our student insurance. We offer a student insurance plan. We're mindful that a lot of our students are coming from areas that you may be on an HMO. And if you're on your family's or parent plan, that means you have really good care wherever your parent or family is, and maybe not so much in Portland or Salem. So this university health insurance, it is an automatic opt-in. You must waive out of it, okay? And again, students will receive upwards of 25, 30 emails if you have not responded to this. The deadline for waiving this is 9/13 at Willamette and 8:30 for PNCA. And we really encourage you to check your current plan. We have our health insurance plan is linked on our website, so you can compare. Please check your coverage to see what coverage you have in the area so that you can make an informed decision for yourself, and especially around those with HMOs who may not have good care. In those cases, what we want to avoid, of course, is the student having to go home to seek care and missing out on the educational opportunities here. So that one's really important. Please pay attention to it. I want to make sure, obviously, that you will have access to it if you want it, but also waive out of it and aren't charged for it if you don't. So I'll stop there.
All right. Hello again, everyone. Again, my name is Abbas Hill, and I'm the Dean of Students for Community Care and Inclusion. And a perfect segue, as Don really set up kind of the structure and support of health and wellness on campus. Like, we all are responsible for supporting our students in their health and well-being. It's not just the responsibility of the counseling center and of health services. And so it's also, Lisa at the beginning of our presentation had shared that we hope to be partners with you as parents as we're navigating and helping and supporting your students. And so it would be remiss of us if we didn't mention and talk about how we're working with students who might be in distress. Throughout the academic year, you might have we might have students who might call their families, like, to let them know that they're dealing with some challenges. And so we wanted to highlight some behaviors. This is not an exhaustive list, but these are some of the concerning behaviors that we often see sometimes with some of our students. So if students are having suicidal thoughts, if they are self-injurious, if they're injuring themselves or are cutting and things of that nature, if they're more irritable than they normally are, if they're continuously irritable, if you're observing some avoidance behavior, if they're having some difficulties concentrating and keeping focus, if they're excessively worrying about situations or challenges and things of that nature, if they're having trouble sleeping, or if they're having some eating problems and they're missing meals and things of that nature. Like, these are some of the behaviors that are concerning for us that they may call out and reach out to their families about. And so when you do receive that call, and we hope that no one does, but we want to prepare you that if you do, that these are some questions that you can ask that can really kind of spark some conversation and some processing. So, how are you feeling? Really ask them how they're feeling in the moment. At times, like, they just students and just as human beings, we want to know that that folks care, and I know that being their family members and their loved ones, they know that you care about them. But it's a good reminder, and so this is a good question to ask. How are you feeling? asking them what can they do about it. You know, sometimes they might be calling about a roommate issue that they might be having, or like, you know, an issue in class, like, and asking them what they can do about it is not like putting all the responsibility back on them to like resolve everything, but like they may have options available to them that they just probably haven't thought through. And so that question can really kind of help jolt some of those skill sets that we're hoping that they develop as they're with us. And so helping them start that process and to think about how they can resolve some of these issues, or at least like be a part of the process of resolving them themselves, like really kind of helps with that independence that Lisa talked about before. And then like another question that I think is a very important one is like, what are some of the resources at the university that can help you with this? You know, sometimes like when we're dealing with something or we're stressed or distressed, like we might not be thinking about those things. And so you asking them those questions that they call like really would spark some thought process in how they're going to navigate through overcoming some of these challenges, because the idea is that the students inevitably, as human beings, like we all experience challenges. It's about how we get through them and how we learn through them, and like, and through this partnership, like you can help us with that process with them. So like, you know, further kind of exploring this, like some students see concerns as crisis. And so like, these are some of the phrases or some of the things you might hear them say. You know, if I fail this class, I will lose my scholarship. You know, if I will literally die if this happens, or like, you know, if this doesn't happen. No one is willing to help me. I'm going to flunk out of school if X doesn't happen. And like, you know, and there's these phrases can go on and on and on. I'm pretty sure that like, you know, my colleagues and I, you as family members probably heard some things similar. And so in these situations, it's just very important to just remember where our students are developmentally. Like this, as they're entering campus as emerging adults, like some of these things they probably haven't dealt with, like, you know, and they may have never seen, you know, some of these challenges before. So their perspective on it may be they may see it and a lot worse than it actually is. And so remembering kind of where they are. Most importantly, really look for some observable behavior. Like, what are you noticing? What are you witnessing? What are you experiencing as you're talking to, or as you're interacting with and communicating with your students? When you're listening and you're hearing them, listen non-judgmentally. Like, don't, you know, you are there to be a sounding board for them. You're there to support them. You may have the idea already, and you may have an idea of what to do. It's important that you kind of hold on to that, and not necessarily fix it for them. You want to help them through it, and so you want to assist them in developing the plan. You don't want to develop the plan for them. I believe that there may be before, but yes. So as you're listening, these are some phrases that's helpful. Like, you know, when you're listening and validating like your student's concern, if they're providing it to you. So you might say like, it makes sense that you would feel upset, or I hear that this is very important to you. I want to be sure I understand your concern, and then like ask them, like, you know, kind of paraphrase and kind of clarify so that they know that you've been listening and that you care about what they're saying. And it sounds like this has been a very difficult situation, ... So these are some good starting and jumping off points when you're listening and validating their feelings and their concerns, because their perspective on things is going to look a lot different than ours. And it's important that we understand their perspective and support them through that process as they're trying to navigate and through these challenging times. So if you get to a point where you need to refer your students to counseling, I know that for some people, like, this is, you know, there's a lot of stigmas around counseling sometimes, like, and counseling is so good for us. It's good for us as adults. It's good for us, and it's even more beneficial to our students as they're navigating this emerging adulthood. And so like as you're trying to kind of springboard them or kind of provide a bridge to them to the counseling center and your referral, you might say some of these phrases. Many students visit the counseling center because they do. It's a fact. It's true. Lots of students have found it to be helpful. That is also true. Counseling on campus is free and confidential. That is also true. And you could try one session to see if counseling could be helpful. There are times where, just getting them in the door sometimes is important, and your encouragement and your support in getting them there is truly beneficial. And so there's a theme to all these phrases are true. So like, you are setting them up for success if you feel that this would be a great resource for them.
So now we're coming to the end of our session, but just a couple other points. There are some things, as we've talked about all this confidentiality that Abbas just mentioned, is there are some things that as students are of legal age that we can't discuss, even if we'd like to. And that is, are they going to class, their conduct record? Are they going to these meetings that we're suggesting that they go to, whether they be with a counselor or health services or administrators? We can't discuss their grades, their overall academic performance, or the things they're engaged in. But we certainly can hear information from you. If a student wants us to talk with you about any of these things, there are FERPA waiver forms. FERPA stands for the Federal Educational
Right to Privacy Act.
Right to Privacy Act. There you go. Thank you. I should have had that written down before I tried to say it. Essentially, it's a document saying that they give permission for us who to talk to and about what kinds of issues. But again, we want to make sure that they aren't feeling coerced into that conversation, so it doesn't benefit you to force them. I think more importantly, if you have concerns about any of these areas, to try to just ask them about it and talk to them about it, rather than make them sign something so that they can I can talk to you or someone can talk to you. We want to certainly partner with you. We can speak in broad generalities about this is what would happen. And the information you give us allows us to sort of have more information to reach out to the student, to know that you're concerned, and so we can take it from there. But what we can talk about with you are anything that would be life-threatening concern. We don't need a FERPA waiver or a consent form if we believe your student is in any kind of a life-threatening situation, harm to themselves or others. If they're hospitalized and are in a situation where that we know that they weren't able in a situation to contact you, and we become aware of it, that's information that we would share with you. If a student is missing, we have a whole missing student kind of protocol, and we have a whole alert system where if faculty don't see students in class, or if a roommate or a friend has a concern, we have an electronic alert system. The number of us get told immediately. We can, if they eat in the dining hall, if they're on a meal plan, we can check card swipes. That ID system that Ross talked about allows us to know the last time someone entered a building. So there are lots of ways that we can know, are they around, or if they really are off campus. Because sometimes as adults, they might just decide not to respond or go away for the weekend and not tell anyone. We don't encourage that, because we don't want to alarm this kind of alert system, but know that one exists. So that would be another thing to communicate with your student. If you're going to not communicate with us, let us know. Otherwise, we're going to trigger an alert system. And I think they would rather not have the director of campus safety knocking on their door because they didn't return your phone call for 3 days. And again, if there is any kind of campus emergency, we would send an email out to parents. There would be a banner on our website, and students have the ability to sign up for an alert system. And if they would like a family member or someone else to be part of that campus alert, they can sign someone on to receive those alerts. We have that for sure for Salem. We're working that out to include PNCA in that system, hopefully by the time that school begins. And so then last, I just want to say, we know that this is a trying time, not just, exciting, but excitement is also can be trying and elevate emotions. And so, our best advice is to keep calm and to take care of yourself, whether it's that you're an empty nester now, or if this is your first or your last going away to college, or one of many. I think knowing that your student can see you modeling how you're taking care of yourself through this trying time and the stress and the emotion that comes with it goes a long way, because they are looking to you for guidance and as a role model, whether or not they're letting you know that they are or not. So with that, I'm going to stop screen sharing. Thank you for listening. And we want to open it up for any questions that you might have by putting your question in the Q&A.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lisa Holliday. I'm Associate Dean of Students at Willamette Salem campus. I use she, her pronouns, and I'll be sharing some of the questions that you all have put in the question and answer box. And there's quite a few questions about insurance. So I'm going to direct these to Dawn.
I can read.
Okay. You got them? Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to, there's several with themes there. So thank you for these questions. I think I can answer a lot of these in one response, and apologies for the confusion I caused earlier. I mentioned, and it is true, anybody, regardless of insurance coverage, can come to Bishop Wellness Center. That is true. Bishop does not bill insurance. Okay, so we're not paneled with anybody. The only insurance that we bill is our student insurance. Okay, and the things that we would bill for are like labs and medicines and the things that I mentioned. That's the only insurance. So we're not unpaneled with Blue Cross Blue Shield or Kaiser or anything like that. So there were a few questions about, does it, when we do labs, there was a question about what might be covered for labs. There are some labs that we do in-house, and there are some labs that we do out-of-house, right? The out-of-house lab, so we send things off campus, we contract with the private lab, that lab will bill your insurance. Bishop does not, okay? So know that there are a number of options that students can avail themselves of. The other questions are about setting up primary care in town versus seeing Bishop for the routine stuff. Most of our students use us for their primary care, and then when we need to make a referral off campus. So again, think of us sort of as the first stop for primary and urgent care, regardless of your insurance coverage. And then again, based on what the students' needs are, we can see them in-house or refer them out of house. The one question that did come up that I think is an important thing to mention, and that is medication for mental health conditions. We do not have in our health center the capacity to write prescriptions for or assess unwrite prescriptions for mental health conditions. That is something we refer out to our community for. And the reality is that the Salem and Portland community is comparatively under-resourced in that area. So if you wanted to transition that care to a local provider, please start making those calls now. I will tell you, most of our students have better success staying connected with their prescriber at home and doing telehealth visits and transferring prescriptions up here. There are a number of pharmacies close to both campuses, within walking distance of both campuses, that I'm happy to talk through there as well. But if your student needs some support for ongoing psychiatric medications or medications for psychiatric conditions, please start setting up a plan now and not wait until the supply of medication is almost out to make that phone call, because there will be very little to do at that point. So plan ahead, and also know we'll be putting our contact information in the chat at the end of this, and please feel free to reach out individually as well.
I'm wondering, Kat, because you've had experience at PNCA, if you want to address sort of what you've seen, how students have managed that there.
Yeah, so we have some students who, if they don't have a condition that they're actively maintaining, they usually rely on some of our urgent care facilities nearby. Zoom Care is one of our more popular because it's in walking distance from both Art House and the school. They do actually have some limited healthcare prescribing abilities there, so they can write for a few ADHD meds, some depression and anxiety meds. And then if you need a specialist, or you don't want to use Zoom Care for, maybe your insurance doesn't cover it or something like that, we do recommend ZocDoc, which is a fantastic resource. You put in whatever insurance you have, and it'll show you what doctors are paneled for that insurance, and help you find a provider.
Okay, got some more questions here in the chat. A safety question, this is probably for you, Lisa. What is your plan for fire season, especially this year, and that students will be arriving during the height of it? Will there be fire updates for families driving to Salem? What is the protocol once they're on campus if there's a fire nearby?
Sure, I certainly understand if you're watching the news, what that looks like. And last year was a kind of one of the most horrific fire seasons on record. What I can tell you is that even though it might be hard to tell from a map if you're not from here, most of those fires are south and east of us. And so they aren't as close as it might look. But that said, you're right, we are. Mostly what we're concerned about is the smoke. I mean, that's what we experienced was really toxic levels of smoke. The good news is, based on where we are with COVID this year and our mitigation strategy, the national vaccine movement, is that it allows us to take the fans that we were using in classrooms, and we can now put them in the residence halls in ways that we weren't able to do because fan shortage was great last year, because that caught us off guard. So we are prepared with fans. We would, as we've said before, if there were any alerts would go to your students. We would be notifying families. We would be putting information on our website in very clear, in very clear ways. We have met to make sure that our website is being updated with what to do and where to go. What we are finding is, in most cases, Salem was the evacuation site for fires that happened last year, rather than us needing to be evacuated. But if it came to needing to be evacuated, that's not something that the university would direct, but the state and local officials would be telling us what to do, and then we would therefore be communicating that in as real time as we could. So we certainly monitor conditions. We certainly are aware. I certainly understand the heightened concern, and we are too. I don't know if Ross, you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, well, I'll just say a little more about what Lisa has talked about. Also, Don, about emergency response. We do have an emergency notification system, and it's not an opt-in system. It's every student employee is automatically enrolled in our emergency notification system, and we have that available. We typically use it for lesser kinds of emergencies, like there's a snow day or something today, but certainly that's available at all times if there was a critical emergency where we needed to notify people immediately of some situation where they needed to take action to mitigate their circumstance, and we would tell them what steps to take to improve their situation to become safe. And so that system is in place. It goes to all students and employees, and we test that system the first day of every month. And so sometimes we get inquiries from parents, oh, could I be added to that system so I know when that happens? Well, unfortunately, the answer is no. It's only students and employees are enrolled in it. But if your student chooses to add, they can add both their cell phone number, which is the one we hope they add, because that's the one they need. They need to know here and now when that emergency takes place. But their permanent phone number that is logged in with the registrar's office could be their home number, and that they would notify you. So some people enjoy having that notification and enjoy having that monthly test. Other people are irritated by it. Either way, it's your student has control over what number is that permanent number of record in the emergency system. And so one other thing, which is just tangentially related to this, Don mentioned, that Bishop Health Center is the primary care place for students to come when they need any kind of either immediate care or referral to care. And, and that is certainly true, but after hours, I mean, they're only open during the daytime hours at Bishop. So after hours, students can call campus safety. We can call 911 for them. They can call 911 for themselves. But as Don mentioned, Salem Health is right across the street. Urgent Care is right across the street. And campus safety officers will transport students to either of those locations, assuming it's safe for them to do that. We always err on the side of safety. And so if there's any concern that we may not be able to transport them in the best interest of their safety, we'll call 911 and have paramedics assess their situation and transport them if necessary. But if we're able to do that, it's a short trip. Campus safety officers will take them to either of those places for them to receive medical care.
Okay, another question for Dawn. Is the July 22nd deadline for the COVID vaccination for getting the shot or sending in proof of vaccination when you've already gotten the shots?
The reason for the 7/22 deadline is that we expect all students to be fully vaccinated. Fully vaccinated means 2 weeks after your last shot. So if it's a Johnson & Johnson, that's one shot. If it's the Moderna or Pfizer, that's your second shot. We expect all students to be fully vaccinated and submit that data, those dates to us by 7/22, which is tomorrow. Now, if your student, for whatever reason, has not completed that series, please, please, please start now. Start now. The most important thing you can do is support your student in getting that vaccine. If they do not get the vaccine and we do not get that information, or they are not granted an exemption, they won't be able to move into their residence hall and they will not be able to attend class. Your students have received many, 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 many emails to this end with directions to submit that data. So please, again, please encourage them to check their email every day to make sure that they do that. Your support in that, I cannot overemphasize how important it is and how much we appreciate that. So thank you.
And I want to add to that for anybody at the PNCA campus. I am handling all of our vaccine documentation. So if you need to make arrangements with me because, oh no, I haven't gotten it yet, and the deadline's on Monday, just please email studentlife@pnca.edu, and we'll work together to make sure that we have everything for you so that you don't get withdrawn.
Okay, Dawn, do you recommend getting a medical power of attorney set up for students?
Yeah, that comes up every now and then. This is actually the point where students start to make the transition into caring for their own health. And as legal adults, that means learning how to be advocates for your care. And again, I think this question often comes from a place, an understandable place of, oh my goodness, what is going to happen? Am I going to be told if something big happens? You will be contacted in the case of those emergencies listed above. Absolutely. And we also really encourage our students to start being the author of their own healthcare in that way. So that's what I would say.
And I absolutely agree with Don. What I will say is what some parents have shared is where that comes in handy is if your student is, for some reason, has some horrible accident where they aren't in a condition to make decisions for themselves, that's when the medical power of attorney does come. So God forbid that there's an accident and they're unconscious and someone's got to make a decision because they're no longer a minor, that would automatically defer to you. I have heard some folks think that would be the route to go in those kind of worst case scenario. It's hard to think about, but I think in some ways all of us should have probably a healthcare power of attorney if we were in that kind of a situation.
Okay, we are out of questions in the question box. So unless anyone else has a question, I think we'll be wrapping this up.
I did want to make a small recommendation just for anybody else who's concerned about the fires. After the 2017 fire, I made sure to have an N95 stash, and a lot of people around here do keep that, and they are no longer scarce. So send your student off with some N95s just in case, especially if they have asthma or COPD or anything like that.
That's a great tip. And so I think on our housing website, there is I believe, a packing list. And I think that would be a good thing for us to add, that the assumption that our time of mass are over, not just because of fire, but there still might be situations where students are in crowds, where it might make sense for them to continue to wear a mask, for their own comfort. Who knows? Fingers crossed that we don't move into a place where we would be required to continue to wear masks. But as we know, things are constantly changing, so to have a supply might not be a bad idea. So please know this is not the only time by which you can talk with us. We will be available in move-in day, whether you're moving in at Portland or moving in at Salem. Many of the faces that you're seeing here will be, and others or others will be present to answer questions at that time. This webinar will be posted on our website, and we will send out to parents and families links to that information. Please know that I believe on the email that you were sent was a link to the website where they'll be listed, but also to our future webinars. And I don't know if, Lisa, you know off the top of your head which one is next.
I don't, but I do know the topics that are coming up. We're going to have one about life on campus, as it relates to, housing and dining and the type of activities and events that we have going on both campuses. We will have one available for families that have first-generation college students attending in the fall. We'll have one that is detailed about financial aid and student accounts in the registrar's office. And later this summer, we will be having one about just the academic support we provide for students, career development. And the title of that one is Zoom into Success.
So again, thank you for joining us today, and we hopefully will see you in a few short weeks. Take care, everyone.